Welcome to the 175, a channel dedicated to clear thinking, good thinking, and of course common sense. Today's topic, the impeachment mess. Washington Post published an article by Nancy French that was quoting the CT editorial by Mark Galli that is showing that he was trying to defend Christianity, not just attack Trump. It's a kind of a famous thing in Christian circles where the Christianity Today magazine, founded by Billy Graham, came out with an editorial from its general editor, who, by the way, is retiring next month, so he's going out with a big bang, I guess, quoting Billy Graham in some degrees, but also talking about his view that Trump should be removed from office. Franklin Graham kind of replied to that in a very strong way and said that was silly and that his dad, in fact, not only knew Donald Trump, supported Donald Trump, but voted for Donald Trump. That tells you something. Well, I want to talk a little bit, and for the first time ever on this extended 175, I'm going to just read from a couple article excerpts because it is so profoundly stupid and dumb that I just can't let it go. Nancy French writes in the Washington Post article, as she quotes Mark Galli as he explains his real mission, quote, "As a Christian, I like to think of myself as a person who has given my ultimate loyalty to Jesus Christ and the gospel he's called us to proclaim." Well, I would say to Mr. Galli, well, duh. Every Christian on the planet that's truly a Christian believes that 100%. You're setting up a straw man here. No one in Christian circles, evangelical in particular, who has 80% support rate for Donald Trump, believes Donald Trump is God or a demigod. That is silliness. Nobody thinks like that. What we do think is that he is the man for the hour. Is he flawed? Absolutely. And just on a personal note, in the Republican primary, I had him number 15 out of 16 on my voting scorecard. My number one was Ben Carson, believe it or not, and followed by Jeb Bush, because Jeb Bush I thought would be moderate and at least in some form or fashion might have a chance to beat Hillary Clinton, which was the only reason I was voting in the first place. John Kasich was number 16, by the way. People ask me that all the time. So I'm no fan of Donald Trump, but at the same time, this silly impeachment thing is just, well, it's just off the rails. And in this article, he says, the editor of CT says that he's fed up with the way many Christians have treated Trump like a demigod instead of a fallible human. Well, that's silliness. Nobody is treating him like that at all. We would call out anything he does or doesn't do, right or wrong. There's all sorts of things I don't necessarily agree with him, including the Syria pullout. But that doesn't mean that he hasn't been right on 95% of the things that he has, in fact, done. Anywhere from the XL pipeline to his strong pro-life approach to his very, very basic support for the men in blue, men, women, blue. So as far as I'm concerned, Mr. Trump has done quite well in his decision-making, even if he is a flawed individual. He writes, again, the CT editor, whether Mr. Trump should be removed from the Senate or by popular vote next election, that's a matter of prudential judgment. That's correct, but not true, because it should be the popular vote. That should be removed, that he should be removed, we believe, is not a matter of partisan loyalties, but a loyalty of the creator of the Ten Commandments. Now, Mr. Galli obviously doesn't know his Bible. The Bible shows absolutely 100% for sure where God uses people, even unbelieving people, to get his kingdom work done. Nebuchadnezzar would be a perfect example where Daniel was shown and, in fact, was elevated much higher in his kingdom as a result of Nebuchadnezzar's craziness. So to say that somehow the Creator doesn't use ungodly or crazy people or broken people or whatever is just, ludicrous. Another place he says that he describes the other times that CT has mentioned these things, including President Richard Nixon, as a person who failed gravely to live up to the moral demands of the Judeo-Christian heritage, or 1998's editorial of Bill Clinton, a president who has several commandments short of a decalogue. Well, folks, the bottom line is the reason why those guys were being threatened and or impeached was because they did something illegal, wrong. Can you imagine any CEO who, in some form or fashion, used a 22-year-old intern in his public office as the CEO of General Motors or Xerox or Exxon? Can you imagine them still being employed? HR would have fired them a long time ago. So the Senate was right to have a trial for Bill Clinton because he was guilty. There's just a whole lot of Democrats that wouldn't go along with it. Same thing with Nixon. This is not the same thing. According to Galley, he describes Trump's use of political power as profoundly immoral. Well, folks, we've been doing this for years and years and years where somebody has asked somebody to look into something. And by the way, just on a side note, Donald Trump clearly didn't think this was illegal or a problem of any sort, as there were dozens of people involved in the transcript of the actual call. You cannot tell me that Donald Trump could not have flown over there or brought him over to Washington and had a private conversation for 5 seconds to ask him any of these kind of questions if he thought for 1 second that there was a problem. The fact that there was even other people on the call live just shows how silly this impeachment thing is, as he obviously thought he was doing it right. And by the way, the law does require the president to ask foreign leaders, his administration, to ask foreign leaders about corruption. In this particular case, not only was Ukraine's money held up for a bit, but so was Lebanon and another one of the Eastern European countries. There were 3 countries involved. They all are corrupt down to its core. And with Ukraine having a new leader, he wanted to make sure there was some things that back in 2016 that were being a problem, and currently with Mr. Biden, Hunter that is, who was clearly money laundering for the Bidens in general at $50,000 to $80,000 a month for a board. You wouldn't make that if you were on the board of Exxon, let alone this little regional gas company. There was something funny going on like that. Galley also argues that Mr. Trump hired and fired a number of people who are now convicted criminals. Well, what's that got to do with anything? You hire them. They weren't hired criminals when they were hired. If they did, in fact, do something wrong, they were pulled to justice. It's a lot more to say than the Obama DOJ, which obviously didn't deal with Clapper, or, of course, the Attorney General, either one, Lynch or Holder, where they clearly did things wrong, including the whole Fast and Furious thing with the gun deal. I mean, this is just silliness. He says he himself has admitted to immoral actions in business and his relationship with women, about which he remains proud. How do you know he remains proud of that? I've never heard him speak about that since that thing was released, which was like, I think 2013 or something. It was at least 6 or 7 years ago. And of course, there's nowhere in the world where he says he's a Christian per se, but he hasn't done it in office. That's the difference. It's in his past. Okay, so he says later on, can we say with a straight face that abortion is a great evil that cannot be tolerated, and with the same straight face say that the bent and broken character of our nation's leader doesn't really matter in the end? Of course it matters, but that doesn't necessarily mean he needs to be impeached. Clearly, this CT president, CEO, editor guy doesn't understand history. Does he not know that John F. Kennedy, Camelot, he had 3 or 4 women a week in the White House? You can look that up. Robert Caro, Pulitzer Prize biography of Lyndon Johnson, which showed the Kennedy incredible amount of philanderer and adultery. And I don't remember CT or any other outfit. Of course, I don't know if CT was there then, but nobody was clamoring for that, and everybody knew it. Same thing with Clinton and his state troopers running around the state offices collecting women for Bill Clinton to meet. What a grossly immoral character. Does he know that FDR was found dead when he died in his mistress's bed in the Carolinas? LBJ, are you kidding me? He's a fraudulent man from day one. 1956 election was 100% rigged by him. 5,000 different people who were dead voted for him. It's the only way he became a senator in the state of Texas. Yeah. Grossly immoral character. Okay, whatever. And he also says, one that as a Christian, Galley can no longer abide, that sees tainting Christians and their faith so long as they acquiesce to Trump's leadership. Well, of course you're supposed to acquiesce to Trump's leadership. That's what Romans 13 says. You're to submit to the king, for the king was put there on purpose. And a president is no different than a king in the sense that he's an authority figure. You're going to acquiesce unless there's some reason to disagree accordingly. But if he sets the tone, that's the tone you're going to try to do. Although, from a moral standpoint, if for some reason he wants you to do something immoral, you can argue those things differently. He says, or she said, Nancy French says, Christianity dependent on Trump is a weak faith indeed. No, Christianity is dependent on Trump. That's fake news in its total. I just cannot tell you how dumb this is. When faith is sustained by God, it has no need to compromise its witness to service an adulterous, mendacious, I'm not even sure what that means, reality TV star. He wasn't a reality TV star. He was a businessman first. Get it right. An adulteress, yeah, well, you might want to have a little chat with all your friends with Robert Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, Teddy Kennedy, etc., etc. The Camelot group that the Democrats love. Listen, Mr. Trump is a crass individual, as most New Yorkers are. He does things differently. He speaks his mind through that silly Twitter feed of his. But that doesn't mean he should be impeached. Impeached means the guy is collaborating with our enemies. He's bribing people to do different things, etc. The Mueller report didn't show any collusion, as the Democrats said. The inquiries, there was no place where anybody said he did this, he did that. And by the way, just so we set the record straight, Obama never gave any kind of lethal aid to the Ukrainians either. Not until Donald Trump did. 55 days after that call on July 5th or 25th, he gave lethal aid, and that was on the table from the get-go. Mr. Trump seems like a man of action. Moral character, can't speak. Don't know. But there have been lots of presidents that didn't have moral character. Lots of vice presidents didn't have moral character. For crying out loud, Spiro Agnew was convicted of conspiracy. It was back in the 70s. I mean, Christianity Today has lost its mooring. At least that guy did. It's not enough to impeach a guy for that. Immoral things, there were 9 articles of impeachment with Clinton. Every one of them had something to do with law, and where he lied under oath. Remember that? Moral, where you say, I swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, and he lied on purpose. That is impeachable. This, a phone call with 25 different people seeing, hearing, and watching it, that's just ridiculous. Find something else, but not this. That's it for the 175. Subscribe if you can. If you'd like to get more updates on all sorts of different topics, make sure that you follow me on my Facebook page, because for some reason Facebook doesn't seem to share all the information we put out. So you have to be a follower rather than just having me as a friend. And take care and Merry Christmas. That's enough for the 175.